To start, and you can hear maybe there we've just started recording. Let me first begin by welcoming everyone to this community meeting to mark the launch of National Hate Crime Awareness Week, which is being celebrated across the UK. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Councillor John Wolfe, and I'm the lead member for community safety at Islington Council. And I'll be chairing tonight's meeting while sharing a bit of the work that we're doing in Islington Council to tackle hate crime. And the purpose of this meeting really is to give the public the opportunity to hear from community leaders about what hate crime means to them, the importance of reporting hate crime, and what their organisations are doing to tackle hate crime. And we'll also hear a bit about the events planned during this week. If it's not obvious already, this is a recorded webinar, which means that only the speakers will be visible and able to speak, but you're all warmly invited to type questions into the Q&A box, which we'll return to at the end. And the meeting is set to conclude at 8:15. So as you can see, we've got a number of distinguished speakers tonight who've each come along to share for 5 or 10 minutes. And I'll just very briefly introduce them. We've got Inspector Ellen Chapman from the Metropolitan Police Inspector for Safer Neighbourhoods in Islington. Welcome, Ellen. Colin Adams, the Chair of Islington's Hate Crime Forum. Tessa Havers-Strong, Director of Forum Plus, which just celebrated its 20th birthday. Happy birthday again to Forum Plus. Ros Miller, the Director of Islington Faiths Forum. Mohammed Kosbar, Chairman of Finsbury Park Mosque. And last but by no means least, January Jones from the prominent charity Centre 404. So if I may, I'll begin very briefly by just sharing some of the work that we're doing at Islington Council to tackle hate crime. And I kind of hope you don't mind I speak in a personal as well as a professional capacity. I'm not a usual target for hate crime, unlike many others in our borough. But I'll never forget when I was around 9 years old and I started getting bullied at school for my Jewish heritage. I'll never forget when my brother in his 20s got punched in a pub and verbally assaulted for being Jewish. And when he got verbally threatened on the basis of his perceived sexuality. Like a disease, hate crime is contagious. It spreads fear and trauma into lives, families and communities, and it makes our streets feel less safe for many. No one, absolutely no one, should live in fear of persecution, and Islington Council, alongside our numerous partners, stands united against hate crime in all its pernicious forms. And it's really important for me to stress from a council perspective that we're incredibly indebted and grateful to the work of our speakers and the organisations that they represent. In particular, we seek to work to support the partnership work that goes on in the Independent Islington Hate Crime Forum, and we're committed to working with community organisations and individual members to reduce the risk of people becoming a victim of hate crime, improve the identification and reporting of hate crime, support victims and those who fear being victims of hate crime, and to challenge the police to ensure quality investigations are carried out and to improve the outcomes for victims who report a hate crime. Within our Safer Islington Partnership, which coordinates work on crime reduction and community safety, tackling hate crime is a strategic objective. In July 2021, we launched, many of you might have heard of this, the Safer Spaces campaign in Islington, which was the largest community safety engagement programme in the country last year. And there essentially we went out to businesses, we went out to residents, and we asked them where they felt safe, where they didn't feel safe, and we collated all of that information, and on the basis of that information, we've been devising a series of actions to tackle both perceived and real areas of concern for our residents, and we'll be going back out to the community in the new year to share some of that work as we continue to share that work on a more local level as well, and hate crime naturally features in that. So we're using what we learned from that consultation to inform action plans across the borough. We're also expanding our Safe Havens scheme, which is a practical way of helping anyone in Islington enjoy their community, knowing that support is easily available. And you can go online to learn a bit more about our Safe Haven scheme and sign up if you're a business or pub or cafe for more. I could go on and on, whether it's through our licensing policy, which is under review, where we encourage licensed premises to display posters around hate crime, whether it's through our awareness resources to explain what hate crime is and the process of reporting, whether it's promoting the Islington Hate Crime Pledge to individuals and organisations. And again, a shout out for that. If you go on our website, you can sign that. Islington Council across the piece take hate crime incredibly seriously and do all that we can to tackle this pernicious form. And that's also alongside the internal work we do with our staff through forums to have clear channels if any of our staff members are concerned about hate crime or have experienced hate crime, that they have the necessary support. So with that, I'm going to open it up to our speakers and panelists. And I'd like to first invite Inspector Ellen Chapman. Is she here? Has she dropped off? Oh, there you are. Sorry. Hey, Helen. Can I hand over to you to talk about what hate crime means to your organisation and what you're doing?
Yep, of course. So as a representative of the Metropolitan Police, hate crime is really very important to us. What matters most to Londoners is the top of our agenda, and we know that as a multicultural city that we need to protect everybody who lives here. Islington has a wide range of communities, and part of our work is building up relationships with those people so that we can more effectively deal with any crime that is reported. Tackling hate crime is one of our highest priorities. If anyone does experience a hate crime, once it is reported, they should receive a follow-up call from their local Safe Neighbourhood team to ensure that they're referred to Catch if they wish to get some added support or be signposted to a more appropriate agency. And by building this secondary relationship, we're hoping that we can improve our sanction detection rates for hate crime so that people don't feel that they're not being supported through the process, and then unfortunately sometimes it is the case that people drop out. They don't feel they could progress with it to court. So hopefully by strengthening this bond through the investigation process, we can improve the outcomes for victims. That is something that we are striving to do over the coming months. We also need to ensure that we get people to actually report hate crime. We have to do this a variety of ways, by being more available to our public, by building relationships with communities that we don't have such strong links with, because without people telling us about it, it becomes difficult to properly champion these crimes and deal with the people who are committing them. We have to tackle this as a society, and so we need people to tell us that it's happening so that we can weed people out who are doing this. So in order to support people who have sorry, got so to support people who have reported a hate crime, we ensure that they're referred to Catch if they wished it. I know I've said that already, but it's very important. And we can on Islington refer them to Forum Plus as well, because we know that we have that invaluable resource here. And we also can support our safeguarding who take on more complex cases, so that there's a different level of investigation if it is merited. And then we can have risk management meetings as well, just to further safeguard our victims. We can put things in place like panic alarms if it's deemed necessary, or sometimes carrying a mobile phone that will call the police if needed. And we work closely with the council for things like multi-agency response called MARAC. It is, if there's a hate crime concern, it could go to that forum too for a multi-agency approach. And what still needs to be done, so we need to continue to show that we're able to deal with these kinds of reports by making sure that they are properly recorded, that we could receive them from a multitude of different organisations. I know Tell Mama, they do pass things to us for us to record and investigate. We need to increase our sanction detections, which is bringing people to before a court and getting them charged with offences. And we need to raise awareness in our community so that everyone is a champion for people who are suffering a hate crime. If everyone is working towards the same goal, then we're able to raise awareness and help people come to us without fear of it not being taken seriously or it not going anywhere, or the feeling of, oh, nothing can be done anyway. That's definitely not the case. And we have strict processes. We have something called a hate crime risk assessment, which is similar to a domestic violence risk assessment, and that just asks some further questions to properly identify if there's any unreported matters that we could deal with, or any further support that we could offer. So those are the kind of things that as the police we can do, and coming to events like this where we can answer people's questions or hopefully strengthen our relationship with the community even further.
Thank you so much, Ellen. And I should say, if any panelists want to ask questions or chip in, feel free. Really great to hear you talking about, that narrative of nothing can be done, because that's something that I hear from the community a lot. Like, what's the point in reporting? Nothing's going to happen. So, in summary, what's the kind of most effective way of sort of reassuring people that actually, no, if you do report this, it's going to be taken seriously? And is there a good kind of what's the word? Kind of process or evidence for that actually getting the perpetrators of hate crime?
Yes, so obviously, so there are two different types of hate crime. So there'd be aggravated and motivated, and they would receive a stronger sentence in court. So it's definitely worth, pursuing this all the way to court, because it does receive a better outcome. Say if it was an assault charge, it would have a higher tariff at court because it was motivated by a hate crime. And so, sorry, I forgot the other part of your question.
Well, just in terms of the catching of perpetrators, is there a good track record there?
So this is an area we do have to improve our detection rate on, and that's why we brought in these processes as referring people to support agencies and this follow-up call from our Safer Neighbourhoods teams, just to try and coach people through the process, because as you say, people feel like there's no point because it could be lengthy, or we could have to do multiple inquiries. So if we can explain our processes better, we're hoping it will improve our detection rate and outcomes for victims.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ellen. And I know certainly from a council perspective, it's very important for us to, encourage victims of hate crime to report it. Because it also, from a council perspective, and I'm sure from the police, helps us understand where and how these crimes occur, and builds on what necessary steps we can take to tackle it. So thank you very much, Ellen. I'll move on to our next speaker, Colin Adams, the chair of Islington's Hate Crime Forum. Over to you, Colin.
Hi, thanks, John. Yes, I'm Colin Adams, and I'm the chair of the Hate Crime Forum. It's for those that don't know it, it's we meet every 3 months. It's a collective community group to meet with the police and with the community safety team and other people across the council to discuss hate crime. And it's been in existence for about 4 or 5 years. I'm sure Bev or Jonathan can correct me. But what was really interesting and still interesting, the question I still say to people is, what is hate crime? And I would urge all of you to go to your friends and ask what hate crime is, because Bev, Jonathan, Lauren, all of them can tell you we still have that challenge about people understand what hate crime is. Some of the work that we do, we meet every 3 months. With the police, we discuss our meetings, data hotspots in Islington. So I can tell you the hotspots are Highbury Corner, Nags Head, and Whittington, just around Archway. We look at the data, we look at successful sanctions, and the police do a really good job. What the challenge I feel sometimes, we don't promote it or talk about it as much so people can find out. They asked me a question about why hate crime is important, and I'll just give you just a quick. The community safeties, the Safer Spaces campaign had how antisocial behaviour is the second biggest issue that residents face. And when I spoke to some residents that I run a community, so sorry, by way of background, I run a community centre on Crouch Hill, Brickworks Community Centre. I chair a network of 15 community centres across Islington. For my sins, I'm also the vice chair of the Safe Neighbourhood Board. But when I spoke to residents, I told them I was coming in today to talk to them about kind of hate crime and their views. And they were saying to me, well, you know, Colin, I'm having a little problem on my estate, but, you know, I'm getting called names, but it's only names, so I don't report, it's only names. But that turns into something more insidious and more about anxiety and mental health, and it's World Mental Health Day today. So again, it's kind of like anxious and make people stressed. We've done a lot around hate crime in the borough. I'm very proud of what we've done. We've had some training, educating people what hate crime is. We continue to do that to raise awareness. And I know that Ros will talk to you about women's social training, but what was really interesting with the Sarah Everard case was talking to groups of women about what they felt was acceptable behaviour and how they interpreted it. And it was really scary. I've got 3 sisters, and just talking to them about what they would do. And violence against women is one of our biggest areas of hate crime. But in terms of statistics and in terms of era, 50% of hate crimes made up of race and faith. Then I know from a national report, that report they reckon there's about 40% underreported of hate crimes. People don't report verbal hate crime. They don't see it as an issue. But if you get wolf whistled 62 times, as a young lady did around Highbury Fields, it becomes an issue. Or if you get called 44 times terrorist bomber, it makes an impact. But Mohammed and other people we've spoken to these people, and we just don't raise it. We don't think it is, and we just absorb it. At a point you can't absorb anymore. The police, as I said, we work really closely with police. We do certain bits. We want to increase the sanction rate, so we do dip sampling. We look at cases where there were no further action to see if we can educate parties in terms of what accurate reporting they need to do in terms of by the perpetrator and by the police, so we can get successful sanctions. But just on the other side of that is most victims of hate crime don't want people to go to jail. They just want it to stop. They want the people to leave them be and let them away. And it's really quite it's quite refreshing. People just want to educate people. And I know from my experience of having people from the opposite ends of the scale meeting and breaking down barriers and misconceptions, that they have a greater, they've got more alike than they've got against each other. I think that's really important. I think just in terms of the community, I want community groups to join the Hate Crime Forum. I want them to bring our cases. I want them to be part of the third party. If people don't feel comfortable going to the police, that I want more third party reporting sites so people can go around the borough and report it. We're looking at that, raising them, making sure that people can report them. My community centres are safe havens as well, places where they can report them. I want victims to be supported better. I think it's devastating about victims about supporting. And as I said, and I'm going to be controversial because I always want to show people the context of where we are with hate crime. Like John said earlier about Jewish, I didn't realise, I've said this before, but I didn't realise I was black till I went to a secondary school and someone called me a name. I went, what's that? And I went home and asked my mum and dad. And they said, that's not a very nice name. And it really impacted on me. I felt, wow, I didn't realise that people could do that. And you don't, my young people are on a community centre, as I said, they don't see colour, they see people. But sadly, as we get older, our differences or some other outside external influences generate our personality, and then we either join or we sometimes grow apart. And I think it's really important that we try to reassure everybody, irrespective of their background, sexuality, irrespective of disability, they can, but they are worthy, because it does have an impact. So I've got a person around Highbury Corner, a young man who's traumatised. He had an incident with one of his neighbours. and now his neighbour has been moved. But if he comes back into the area, he rings me in a panic. He saw him down the street. He was nowhere near his house. He saw him down the street and rang me in a panic. That's what it does. And I always say to people, you never know their names, but you know how people make you feel. And I think it's really important that so he's been supported in a way. I can go on, but I just wanted to say, if you don't think, as I said, 50% of hate crime is around race, and if you don't think it's had an impact on our society or our community, in the Black and Asian community, one of the single biggest projects is skin lightening cream. Even this day and age, skin lightening cream. That's what people, because they want to change who they are. But as I said, hate crime is really important that you report it. As Ellen says, the police have made a commitment that you'll be contacted within 24 hours by one of their ward officers. I know that happens because I check up to make sure that they do, and people feel more reassured. As I said, from a community perspective, I want people to come to the Hate Crime Forum. I want them to find out more information, and we have an action plan. I think they're put together with excellent action plan from 2021 to 24 that we can share with participants after. Look at it, challenge it. If it's not good enough, if it's got things missing, there's an aspect around social media that we can't contain. And I want to mention social media because the Black Lives Matter really increased hate crime. It really made a difference. There are a lot of people that said to me, all lives matters, and didn't really get it. But it was really interesting. And social media, and you saw the three black players that missed. My son's a footballer, and all the three black players that missed the penalty of Euros and the stick that they get. So if we strip away the respectable veneer, we still have an issue around prejudice, racism, and hate. I've had people say to me, why is it called a hate crime? Because they find it a little bit harsh saying hate crime. But I say to them, you have to see how some of the victims experience it. And if it was that, and if it wasn't particularly that, particular groups even feel more under siege. I know Tessa's going to talk about LGBT and the disability group. They're the two most underreported groups in my network. They simply don't report because for a variety of different reasons, I'm sure Tessa and January will elaborate on. Anyway, I could go on, but I know we're short on time. But as I said, we'll share the action plan with you. Isn't it a fantastic leaflet? I don't know if you can see it, but this leaflet is fantastic. It shows you how to report a hate crime, what will happen, further investigation, contact reviews, and follow-up. So I think we should share that with everybody as well. And I'll stop there. But as I said, I don't know if there's any questions, but if you need my email address or want to find out more about the action plan, the date of the next meeting, we will share that with you after this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colin. And yeah, just a shout out to members of the public. Do put in your questions and we'll come to them at the end. Yeah, again, thank you so much for all the work that you do personally and the fantastic work of the Hate Crime Forum. And I think your point around like being clear about what hate crime actually is and educating the public on that. And, the fact that from the legal definition, it's an offence which is perceived by the victim to be motivated by hostility or prejudice. I think that's an important point to emphasise.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay.
I think there was a question about Rebecca asked a question about the residents come to the Safe Neighbourhood Board meeting.
Yes. Are the safety neighbourhood panels open for residents to join?
Yeah, if you know where your ward is. Yeah, sorry, John.
Yeah, no, please, Colin, go.
I think we were just saying, if you find out where there should be a ward chair, contact your ward chair and come along to the meeting. We have the Safe Neighbourhood Board meetings every 3 months, and we have 17 wards in Islington. There's a ward chair, and you can find out what they're doing around in your local area. Rebecca, so happy for you to contact me after, and I can link you up. You said you haven't heard from them. We can chase that up. So please contact me after the meeting. I'll see what I can do. Okay.
Absolutely. And for those others, the ward panels are kind of firmly held by the police, but it's the opportunity for residents of a ward to learn about what's happening in terms of crime and safety within their patch, and to ask police questions about that, to scrutinise and to set local policing priorities as well with the Safer Neighbourhood team. So definitely worthwhile going along. And yeah, as Colin said, Rebecca, very happy to chase that up for you if there's been a problem. Okay, so can I move on to Mohammed Kosbar from Finsbury Park Mosque, who's kindly come along to share with us. Over to you, Mohammed.
Thanks, John. Good evening, everyone. I can say Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you all. Well, I'll start with last week on Thursday, the government, the Home Office issued statistics about hate crime. I'm sure some of you probably have looked at it. From the figures I've seen, it is shocking. The increase of hate crime in general, actually, is shocking. But I'm going to speak here about Islamophobia because I'm a Muslim and I represent the Muslim community. In the statistics of the Home Office on Thursday, there was 3,459 Islamophobic incident during last year, a 42% increase from the year before. So let's imagine a 42% increase from the year before. And that's what was reported. I'm sure probably many haven't been reported, and therefore they are not as well added to this figure. This shows really, I mean, this shows the increase of the far right sentiments and the increase of the far right in general, not just only here in the UK, unfortunately, but it's in Europe. If you've seen what's the election in Sweden, in Austria, and recently in Italy, this gives you the, you know, the impression how the far right sentiments rise in Europe in general. And this is really very dangerous, very dangerous. And the problem is that some government appease the far rights in a way that allow them to flourish within the society and spread their hatred amongst the communities, and cause all these issues and increase on hate crime in general. So that's something which we really need to look at it when we talk about hate crime. How I look at hate crime, to be honest with you, I didn't know what is hate crime until you experience hate crime. When you experience hate crime yourself, you know what it means, hate crime, to you, to your community, to your family, and to your to those who are around you. So it is something which we need to experience it to know exactly what is hate crime. And unfortunately, institutional hate crime now within the society is something we've seen it in a daily basis. And also on the top of that, we've seen now the normalization of hate crime. And in particular, again, I'm talking about Islamophobia. That's like, you know, normal things to happen. You know, some people being attacked in the street, being sweared on, being abused, being heard all these sort of rubbish things. And you know, you still feel that it is normal. It is normal to hear that. It is normal to see that. It is the normalization of hate crime, and in particular Islamophobia. It is very dangerous if we allow that. If we don't challenge this narrative and these sentiments, this will increase again and again and again, and then it will be out of control, and we won't be able to do anything to stop it. And then we will have issues which we experienced in the past in Europe, tenth of years back. Of course, we have to encourage our community to report hate crime in general and Islamophobia in our cases. But as Ellen and Colin mentioned, many of them feel that, well, what's the point? I mean, I reported it once and twice and nothing happened, so I'm not going to bother wait sometimes hours to report and give my statement, and then nothing happened. Well, of course, it's important to encourage them. I know the importance of that, but to you know, to convince the community that this is the right things to do, they need to see some result. They need to see some cases being solved to get to the bottom of some of the cases, I'm not saying all the cases, but some of the cases, we have to tell these people, first of all, the victims, that yes, you will be looked after, and we will not allow this to happen to you. And for those perpetrators as well, to tell these criminals that you will not get away with it. You will pay the price for it, and you will go to prison if something serious you've done. Then they will think twice and 3 times before they do that again. That's unfortunately, there is still a lot of work the police need to do to convince the communities who suffer hate crime that we are there. We are really we are there to help you, and I'm sure the police are there to help, but probably they need to see it. They need to, you know, case studies is very important, to show case studies for hate crime, whether it is Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, black racism, and against any sort of hate crime. It's very important. At least the community can see that the police are doing something. To be honest with you, we have an issue with our young people. Young people, they now question their identity. Are they belong to this country or belong somewhere else? When people tell them go back to your country, or you are this and that, and that's make them confused, make them really confused, and make them feel that they are second-class citizens in this country. And we shouldn't, in the 21st centuries, we shouldn't let the young people feel that. Our women, for example, as Colin mentioned, women are the most vulnerable within the community, especially Muslim women, because of how they look, and because they are the weakest link in the eyes of the perpetrators, because it's easily attacked, and nothing happened sometimes to defend themselves. I mean, we've seen women coming in tears to us, talking about how people push them in the middle of the road with their babies, and how they've been attacked, sweared on. They can't, some of them, they said we can't use transportation anymore. We can't take our children alone to school anymore. We can't go at night anymore because of that. All these sort of things really is something which is, as a community, we really feel that not enough being done to protect all citizens, to protect everyone, and that's something make part of the community feel marginalized, feel vulnerable, feel that they can't live their life normally as anybody else. I always tell the community that, look, in the end of the day, you are here to stay. You are not going anywhere. And whoever tell you go back to your country, tell them this is my country. I'm here. I'm here to stay. My children were born here, grow up in this country, and they will stay here. They are not. If you are not happy, you can go anywhere you want. But we are here to stay. And this is something which we need to make sure that the community challenge those who spread hatred and fear among the communities. Just only. I just finished by what our young people need to hear, especially Muslim young people, that they are proud to be a Muslim and they are proud to be British. There is no controversy. There is no issues being both British and Muslim, as there is no issue between being Jewish and British, and Hindu and British, and Christian and British. That's the right things to feel. So this is something which we really need to educate our community and make them feel proud about it. I'm proud, and our organization, the Finsbury Park Mosque, are proud to be part of Islington, the very diverse borough. And I'm proud that the Islington Council, for example, adopted the definition of Islamophobia just a couple of years ago. And they are putting now like Black History Month and Islamophobia Awareness Month in their diary. And I'm sure any other hate crime or any other hate crime, like anti-Semitism and so on. We are proud that we have this in our borough, and we are all united on that. And again, I can say that as Finsbury Park Mosque, we are proud to sponsor the Black History Month, and I'm putting a piece on the Islington Tribune about that in the next few weeks, actually, to show how, as Muslim community and other community, we are all together on this, and we are fighting racism and hate crime together. Finally, I just want to say, I heard Gary Lineker saying on Twitter just only a few days ago that someone's dream is someone else's nightmare. And he was talking about the Home Office, the Home Secretary talking about her dream, taking all these refugees and immigrants to Rwanda. And actually, I admire someone like Gary Lineker to come out and speak loudly against these racist measures against people who are helpless, who are vulnerable, and they came here to seek safety from the dangers or from the risk they faced in their countries or elsewhere. So we should welcome them. We should welcome the refugees here. And this is part of hate crime when you hear politicians and media talking in that way, actually, about whether it is refugees or immigrants or even citizens in this country. I'll stop here. I know that my colleagues will be speaking to cover all sorts of hate crimes, and I'm really proud that we have all this variety in the borough to talk about hate crime and challenge it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. And again, thank you so much to all the work that you do and all the important work that's done at Finsbury Park Mosque. And I think in what you shared, there is the shocking statistics and the rise of Islamophobia nationally, and the impact that has on people, as you so clearly described, and also, you know, the importance of us making sure that everyone feels that we live in a safe borough, and it's an open and inclusive borough. And again, we stand united against hate crime. And of course, as we go into Islamophobia Awareness Month in November, I think it's another important opportunity for us to tackle the denial around Islamophobia, which Islington Council was proud to define as rooted in racism and as a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. That was important for us to adopt that definition. And yeah, a lot of work to do over Islamophobia Awareness Month. And thank you so much for all your work on that already. Okay, I saw no questions in the box. So with that, I'll move on to Tessa Havers-Strong, Director of Forum Plus. Over to you, Tessa.
Thank you, John, and thank you for inviting me to come along and take part in this discussion tonight for National Hate Crime Awareness Week. My name's Tessa Havers-Strong. I'm the Director of Forum Plus. We're a small independent charity working across Camden and Islington, working to improve the lives of LGBT people living, working or socialising in the boroughs. And part of our work includes supporting LGBT people who've been victims of either homophobic, biphobic, transphobic hate crimes, or they've experienced incidents of that. And by when we're talking about hate crime, I think it's really important to stress that first and foremost, we have to deal with something that is a crime. A crime has been committed, and then where it becomes a hate crime is that crime is motivated by hostility towards the person, or and either because of their, I'll talk from an LGBT perspective, either because of their sexual orientation or gender identity, or perceived sexual orientation or gender identity. And also it's the victim's perception that a crime has been committed. And I might touch a little bit on the stats if I've got time afterwards. But I think because when we look at policing numbers and things like that, we see huge increases right across the board, across all the different protected strands, that hate crimes have gone up significantly. And we need to ask that question, why is this the case? I noticed in the Home Office, in the government report, it says it's down to better better recording of hate crime, and the way that the figures are now collated. And also it could be due to people more willing to report a hate crime. And so there are these factors there that could, we need to understand why the numbers are going up. Because if we look at the national trends on all crime, so the figures I have here for the same time period, there were 6.1 million sort of recorded crimes in England and Wales, and that was an increase of 4%. But why has overall hate crime gone up by 26%? And it's most of that is racially based, but then we see increased numbers of sexual orientation based hate crime or transgender based hate crime. So there are lots of questions there to be asked, I think. And then when you look at those figures and compare them to compared to when you get the sanction detection rates, so when the police say, okay, this is actually a crime, so it's been reported as a crime, but then the police they feel it warrants it to go to the next step, and then it gets passed on to the CPS, and then quite often, so their sanction detection rates can be quite low, and we need to ask why that is. Perhaps it's evidentially based, there isn't enough evidence, or perhaps a crime wasn't committed, but the victim perceived that a crime had been committed. So it's a sort of a tricky question to answer, really. And we've still got data to come out of the crime survey for England and Wales as well, which gives a very subjective view of whether people have experienced a crime or not. And that data set can perhaps better come into hate crime statistics as well. So I'll just sort of put that out there for people. So the forum, we support people who've undergone, who've experienced hate crime, and we will help them through the criminal justice, support them through that victim journey, through the criminal justice system, and we'll liaise with the police and council in either communicating the progress of their case and offering advice and support what to do in the meantime, how to build resilience to ensure that if they are vulnerable, how to avoid future incidents happening again, and that kind of thing. Most of the clients that we get coming to the forum are they experience hate crime where they live, in the very place that they live. And quite often there are neighbours who may have known each other many years, and suddenly there might be some noise disturbances going on, somebody been partying loudly for a few days, or there might be some dog fouling going on, and then suddenly everything escalates from where people knew each other fairly well to suddenly homophobic language being used or racist language being used, and it can have a big impact on neighbourhood relations, and it can affect community cohesion. So we work together with the police and other voluntary community sector organisations and the council. We take part in campaigns like this, but also when we're supporting the victims, we'll work closely with the authorities as well, and try and get a good outcome for the client. So, and other work that we do as well, we work with Transport for London, their junior citizenship scheme, and so we go in and we meet a lot of Year 6 pupils. I think in Islington it was about 1,500 at the last one we did in February, and we just raise awareness on, it's about, there are LGBT people out there, and there are people of different cultures and different races, and it's about generating and understanding respect for each other. Yes, we might all be different, but at the same time, we're all human beings. And I think education is a key part in in helping people become to come more together as a community. So, and I think that work is like a preemptive way of preventing trouble further down the line. And actually, when you've got young people who are 11 or 12 years old, those initial conversations can actually have a long-lasting effect for the rest of their lives. And when it comes to having respect and understanding for other people. If I move on to so why is it important in tackling hate crime? It's sort of been, other people have said it, but our country thrives because we're a rich and diverse coexistence of people, and there are people of different faiths, different races, different ethnicities, and this is something we should all strive together to protect. Hate crime of any kind should have no place in our society, and to reflect this, that's why we have implemented hate crime legislation, because it's society's way of saying we want to treasure our diversity, and if anyone comes down against that, then you can expect a tougher sentence if your crimes were motivated by that hostility to that particular group or person. So that's why it's so important to tackle hate crime, because if you don't address it, it'll carry on and fester and thrive. And it can have huge impacts. I say community cohesion, but it can have, if it's not dealt with, you can have issues of trust with the police. And of course, the victims themselves, you become isolated. You don't want to go outside because you know something's going to happen, or it's very likely to happen. And ultimately, that in fact impacts on your mental health and physical well-being as well. So it's not good for the victim, but also it's not good for society and the communities as a whole either. So why is it important to report hate crime? Well, if you're a victim, it allows you to possibly have take back a little bit of control of what's actually happened to you. If you are that victim, and there are many people I've spoken to who feel absolutely helpless because something very traumatic has happened to them, and so this is one way of actually being able to take action on something actually does empower you, and you also become part of a movement. And we're a National Hate Crime Awareness Week. Thousands upon thousands of people all over the country are participating in that. But just by reporting a hate crime, you're actually part of that movement to try and keep those values of who we are as a society in place. And every report, it builds up a picture of what's going on in the local communities. It shows you can identify patterns of behaviour or little locales where there might be a hotspot and things like that. Colin touched on it with the quarterly meeting of the Hate Crime Forum. You can identify where things are happening, or possibly even who the perpetrators are, and that kind of intelligence can stop things happening again in the future. And also local agencies and police know better when they know what's going on. They're better then able to educate and inform the public of what's happening as well. So not only is it about preventing future incidents, but also it's allowing the public to know these things are going on in your area, please be careful. And this is, so it's a form of protection in a way. And reporting hate crime will, not only does it give you some form of control of what may have actually happened to you in that incident, but it also it makes a difference, not just to you, but it also to your your friends, and also to your community and you know, in the neighborhood where you live. I am very optimistic in the sense that from an LGBT perspective, we have over the last few years, we've seen violent incidents have gone down, you know, significantly compared to 20 or 30 years ago. But what we do see is a lot of antisocial behaviour, and quite often these incidents aren't resolved, and they can fester and fester and fester, and it can take a lot of courage before somebody will come along and say, I can't take this anymore. I actually need to speak to the police about this. Quite often people are worried about repercussions of something happening to them, or people don't trust the police. I think trust is a really key factor of the work that still needs to be done. And quite often people don't necessarily know that a hate crime has been committed. People just think, oh, well, somebody's calling me names, and they don't realise they're being harassed. And you know, harassment is a hate crime, or if somebody's stalking, harassment is a crime. And if that person's doing it because you're gay, lesbian, or trans, or you're a Muslim, that is harassment and it's illegal. And quite often so if you're a newly arrived person into the United Kingdom, you might not know what the laws are. And I think it's really important that education, we can empower our communities to know what the law is, and to understand it, to understand when a crime has been committed, and potentially when a crime hasn't been committed. And this goes back to maybe the sanction detection rates, because if there isn't enough evidence, if somebody doesn't realise that they need to gather evidence to take that to the police, or what's going on isn't necessarily a crime, but it could be harassment, or it could be stalking, or it's a public order offence. Knowing that a crime has been committed will, I think, help improve the figures of outcomes that we want to see, and also building up that evidential requirements will help to lead, you know, to the perpetrator being prosecuted and hopefully convicted. And
I have to wrap up soon enough, Tessa.
Sorry.
This is great. I'm just aware of time. Thank you.
Okay, I'll leave it there. So yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I hate doing that. In fact, you know, really important and pertinent points, particularly around the importance of reporting. And you know, I've really valued the work of Forum Plus and our work on a number of cases. And you know, the stuff that you do around prevention and victim support is so crucial and so valued. And you know, the statistics you raised there around the rise in hate crime, I think we have to, you know, fight the normalization of that, as Mohammed alluded to. And as you said, and as Colin has said, you know, this relationship between ASB and hate crime is something we're very cognizant of, and have to be, you know, very interventionist and preventative in that. Thank you so much, Tessa. Okay, so I'm now going to move on to Ros Miller, Director of Islington Faith Forum.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Yeah, super.
Perfect.
Super. So I'm just going to introduce Islington Faith Forum. So Islington Faith Forum is a local interfaith network in Islington. We are mostly a second-tier organisation, so our role is to support faith groups and organisations in the borough. However, we also deliver frontline work to the community, which is crucial in informing our wider work as we concentrate on local needs and priorities and involve community partners. So what that means is that we work with everyone that you see in the room at the moment and more besides. For as long as we've been working in Islington, and we've worked in Islington formally since 2004, informally before that time, and we've kept up to date with hate crime, as unfortunately it affects many different and diverse faith groups and traditions. We actually find that where you come across religious hate crime, there is usually also racial hate crime involved. So So in Islington, to date, there have been 5 prevalent types of hate crime, as you as the groups here are representing. So it's racial, religious, faith, homophobic, disability, and transgender. But obviously there are other types of hate crime. So for us, religious hate crime is any act that targets a victim because of the offender's hostility towards them or a group based on their theological faith or lack of one. So things like anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and so on. We were asked how important is tackling hate crime to our organisation. We think it's absolutely crucial to tackle hate crime of any type. And that includes misogyny. We actually take a view, although it's not passed in law, we also, when we talk at the Islington Hate Crime Forum, we also talk about misogyny, so hate towards women. Hate crime cannot be allowed in Islington because we feel it's based on ignorance and tolerance, and ignorance breeds fear, fear breeds hate, and hate breeds violence. So as Councillor Wolf has stated, even just one hate crime is one too many. So we all must do what we can to tackle it as soon as we can. So we were asked another question by Lauren, I believe, on how important is it to report hate crime? So some years ago, our charity held a workshop on hate crime. We did it with Colin at Brickworks. We had people attending from the local voluntary and community sector, there were faith groups there, police, council, council officers and residents. And some way into the workshop, we asked everyone if they had experienced hate crime at all. And one young Black woman spoke about how often she experienced racial hate crime on the buses. But she went on to say, because it happened so often, she was used to it now, and she counted it as part of her daily life. We were horrified. We explained that this shouldn't be happening at all, that it wasn't acceptable, and that she actually needed to report it. So yes, it's really important to report hate crime. It will help build an intelligence picture for the police and the council, and it may well save someone else later on the distress of experiencing that same thing. So what does our organisation do to support efforts around hate crime? How do we help tackle it? So whenever there are significant events, be they local, regional, national or international, we check in with our members, with our different faith groups who we think might be affected, and we see if anyone is experiencing any challenges or tensions. And if they are, we link them up with the relevant agency to make sure that they can access the right time of support at that time. So we also work a lot with Islington Hate Crime Forum. We're part of it. We work with Colin and other community partners who are here on this call, like Tessa. As I've said, in the past, we've held workshops on hate crime. And this year, we've also delivered women's safety sessions in response to street harassment. And that's been a really amazing learning curve following all that work, which we've shared with the council and other community partners. And that's also informing the work that we do around Islamophobia Awareness Month. We are supporting an event for Muslim women to talk about Islamophobia. And the whole point is that we want to empower women and actually other people to have a voice when they're dealing with any form of hate crime. So the other things that Islington Faith Forum do is we support dip sampling with the police. And in our case on how religious hate crime is reported, I'll come on to it later, but we have some questions around that. And then generally we make representation where required, where our members come to us and say they need support with something related to experiencing hate crime. So the final question we were asked is what still needs to be done around hate crime? So for us, we see that third-party reporting sites in the community, are good, are healthy for whenever hate crime victims feel that vulnerable, particularly vulnerable or unable to liaise with the police. So bearing in mind that there may be some language barriers also for some community members. We would love to see a more user-friendly hate crime reporting app for all types of hate crime. And maybe this is something we can ask the London Mayor's Office to consider funding again, because they did do it some years back. We would like to look more closely at geographical areas where hate crime is prevalent. So as Colin mentioned, Nags Head, Whittington Hospital, but we also need to look more at Finsbury Park, Highbury Corner, Angel, and also the Emirates Stadium. So Councillor Wolf has introduced a discussion around hate crime champions in the last month or so. That for us is a very interesting concept. And also the fact that people from the age of 12 can be a hate crime champion. And we find that relevant because actually a lot of hate crime takes place in schools. So what still needs to be done? We would like to encourage everyone to report hate crime, even if this is done anonymously by Crime Stoppers. It will still help build a picture for the police and local agencies. And then with regards to, I think the final thing that we would like to raise is the way, I think the best way for us to put it is that we still have a question about the way police report religious hate crime, wondering if it's really as accurate as it needs to be, and whether at times it might be misreported as a racial hate crime. So in summary, I think there's an awful lot to be done around hate crime. And I think it's incredibly important that we all work together on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ros, for that. Really comprehensive, really clear, and really like sort of clear steers on where we need to go next in tackling this evil. And your line about ignorance breeds fear, which breeds hate, which breeds violence, really struck home. And I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, but Dan Lawson, who's an officer at Islington Council within the emergency planning team, he's joined us as a member of the public. And he was on duty for the Finsbury Park terrorist attack when that occurred. And he vividly remembers the victims. And he worked closely with Mohammed and the community, and just, you know, the visceral nature of where hate leads us, and to violence. Yeah, it's shocking. So I think it's always important to remember that. And Mohammed is waving to Dan there. Okay, and so
all the best. I have to go.
Thank you so much, Mohammed.
All the best for everyone.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
See you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Okay, and last but by no means least, January Jones from the prominent charity Centre 404. Over to you.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. Many of my panelists have said a lot of the things that I was going to say, but one of the things that I did want to touch upon, well, first of all, let me take a step back. So Centre 404, we're a charity in Islington, and we support people with learning disabilities and autism, as well as their families. And so one of the things that Tessa did point out or raise was, what is hate crime? And for us, it's helping our our service users to really understand what hate crime is to them. And so we see it as anyone who is targeting a person based on their physical and or learning disability. And that includes targeting people with autism spectrum condition. And that could be based on their perceived social and communication, or how they present socially and communicate. And so we consulted with a lot of our service users, particularly our adult service users. And we found that a lot of the sort of hate crimes that they're receiving are in the form of mate crimes. So we have put together an unwise friendship group to tackle that. And so mate crimes could come in the form of abusive friendships, buying friendships, people asking for their friends to utilize their cards or for money. And so for vulnerable adults, they're easy targets for such crimes. And a lot of our service users don't realize that this is a form of a hate crime. And so through this friendship, this Unwise Friendship Group, we're able to educate our service users so that they're more aware of the types of crimes and how they're being targeted. Another thing that comes up, and Colin mentioned this, is the antisocial behavior, and it's these name calling, and I call it sort of small incidents. And these are little incidents that just chip away. And a lot of our service users, it's almost sort of part of the everyday. Oh, someone calls you an idiot, or someone calls you some kind of negative name or shouts at you. And you don't realize that it's a hate crime, but it actually is. And so those are the things, the small incidents that we're seeing our service users not reporting because they're not truly aware that that is a hate crime. Within Center 404, we're not only supporting adults, but we're also supporting children and young people and their families. And so for family carers, we're seeing hate crimes in the form of crimes against parents who have a learning disabled children or who are supporting a learning disabled adults. And so that's, again, name calling in the street, being targeted when they're with their child, being sort of targeted if their child is displaying, challenging behavior on the street. And so those are also sort of the crimes that we're seeing for our family carers. And then for children and young people, it's all online. A lot of it is online, a lot of online bullying, Snapchat, social media, people targeting our service users because of their learning disabilities, excluding them from social engagements and social situations. And so one of the things that we're doing at Center 404, we're trying to target it in sort of a three-pronged target. So for our adults, again, I said we have our Unwise Friendship Group, but also through our outreach support, service users can speak with their support workers to help them if they are targeted so that they can then report the crime. We've also signed up as a safe haven at Center 404. So all of our service users are aware that if they do feel unsafe in the community and they are close, they can come to us. This happened a couple of weeks ago. One of our service users was somewhere around Upper Holloway and someone shouted at them and it made them very nervous and very anxious. So he came straight into the center just because he needed to go someplace that was familiar to him and where he felt safe. And so that's something that we've been trying to kind of communicate to all of our service users, that if you are out in the community, that Center 404 is a safe haven for you. For the children and young people, particularly for within our after-school clubs for our secondary school children, we're trying to promote an open conversation about what bullying is, identifying what a hate crime is, what language and how language can really be harmful and hurtful, and that something as that could sound innocuous as calling someone a name is actually could be considered a hate crime because you are calling them a name based on a perceived, disability. And so again, that's sort of some of the things that we're doing at Center 404 and what hate crime means to our service users and to our center. Thank you.
Thank you so much, January. And again, I can only echo, firstly, thanking you and your organisation for all that you do, and that really crucial education piece around identifying what exactly is hate crime, and making sure that we all know what it is, and so therefore we know how to report it too. Okay, so 3 minutes left. Sorry, January, did you want to?
I was just going to say, I think it's just learned behavior because we become so conditioned and we hear these things over and over again, particularly, for example, just with our service users within the autistic spectrum community. It's almost like it's very commonplace to say, oh, that person's on the spectrum based on how they're acting or how they're communicating, or there are all these jokes now about a way a person presents themselves. Oh, they must be autistic, and that is hurtful, and that could lead to hate crimes. So I think it's unfortunate that these things are becoming learned behavior. So a lot of our service users and a lot of, for the other panelists, the community and the people that they represent, it's just become sort of so second nature that these little name callings and these small incidents that I mentioned before sort of are almost like water off a duck's back. And that's why these things are not being reported, because people don't really recognize how hurtful and how hateful they really are.
I think that kind of learned behavior feeds into that normalization process of hate crime. And, you know, as all panelists have talked about, with the rise in hate crimes that we've seen, I think it's even more imperative that we're united and fighting this pernicious form of evil. And, you know, it's clear from all the panelists here and hopefully from Islington Council's perspective that we're united in that fight, and there's a lot of work that's happening to tackle it within this space. So just to conclude then, firstly to thank all the speakers and thank everyone for coming along and listening. I think we've heard a range of different views around how we can effectively tackle hate crime together, major concerns about the rise in hate crime and the effect that has on marginalizing yet further members of our community, and our determination to stamp it out. As has been said, there is no place for hate crime in Islington, full stop. And making sure that, you know, with that, the danger of the learned behavior, the danger of normalization, the danger of escalation, particularly around ASB, that we're always fighting it, we're always cognizant of it, we're supporting victims, we're encouraging reporting, and we're being very clear that it has no place here. As we're in Hate Crime Awareness Week, do go onto Islington Council's website. You can see a range of different activities we've got planned for this week, including community engagement stalls, a broader awareness campaign. We've got a poster competition for schools, and we'll announce 3 prize winners who will each win a £50 voucher. We've also got a hate crime leaflet, and again, a shout out to the sign up for the hate crime pledge as well. So look at that, bang on 15:15. Can I once again thank everyone so much. If any members of the public, we answered all the questions, but if there's anything else, always feel free to contact all or one of us or all of us. We're always keen to hear from you all.